G'day, folks, and welcome to another edition of the Pace Setters fantastic podcast, Tongue Tie Off.
That's it.
Coming off the back of a pretty big week at Melton Trots last Saturday, which J-Bomb will get to in the form preview section and the review section, talking about our votes for the Fabergé egg and all that jazz.
Oh, I just feel I'm in the presence of greatness tonight. Cody, we were just chatting off air, and I reckon in 13 years I had about half a dozen nights like you had on Saturday. So
unsustainable. It is unsustainable, but you enjoy them when they happen.
It is unsustainable at that level, but you know what? We both had a great night, and the quads. A lot of people these days look at quaddies and say, "Oh, look, what's the point? The pools aren't big enough." Well, we just took that apart. But the quaddies were great, but you just had, and I can't imagine what the emotions were. I know you weren't, you were out and about, you would have been watching, but I just had visions of you being lifted up, hoisted by a crowd. Yeah.
Yeah, not quite. I was watching watching the footy, the Hawks and the Tigers, a pretty nondescript game, really, from a pub in the end, down at the Elsternwick Hotel. Because
Dusty didn't retire, did he?
No, he didn't. And a mate of mine, we were heading down for the footy, and of course we decided, it's MCG Bond. These two teams aren't that great. We couldn't get a ticket because it was sold out because of Dusty's game. So we ended up watching it down the Elsty. And I did have one eye on the footy, one eye on the trots as we worked our way through the night. We're talking about it now. We were going to later, but when Tango Tara got up, I thought, okay, that's interesting because the market went the other way and it still won. Yeah. Beautiful. Roadmaster, again, the market kind of went the other way and it got up. And I thought, well, that's ridiculous. But terrific. I mean, I'm seeing it. And then, honestly, Final Collect, that is a pretty nice cherry on top in the last leg of the quaddie.
We will talk about it in the review, but this is our intro. Now, we chatted quite broadly in an unrecorded segment last week, but you know what? That was merely a dress rehearsal.
Yep.
You did put out a bit of a tweet around form to your Twitterati. We've got very similar Twitterati, obviously. What did you learn about what people want from the way form is presented?
Yep. No, so as you know, we spoke for a good while last week about form innovation.
Don't need to be reminded yet. Yeah.
We will come back to your white paper on the matter in future episodes because Jason's got a lot of thoughts in this space. So I did throw out on Twitter, or the platform formerly known as Twitter, about modernisation of the form, and I asked for some feedback, and thanks to everyone for coming back to me. J-Bon, I'll throw these at you. I'm aware you haven't looked at these responses, so there'll be a bit of a surprise here, but great feedback. Mikey Cole says, I'm not overly, because I hinted that the first thing that should be fixed is trials and a link to the replay. Mikey Cole, I'm not overly fussed on trial results because the classes are often combined and trial against horses that they would never race, or trainers and drivers use trials to try different things. However, I would like more information of previous runs, like positions in the run and individual times. So that's Mikey Cole's view.
Number one, we'll get to some others who talked about the trials, but I did see one from Sue Murray, who we love, and Tara Tom, so well known, WW won well. Craig Knott would know all about it, all of the acolytes of Tara Tom. I get what Mikey's saying, but to be honest, as you and I know, you can look at a trial and judge it for yourself. This comes back to the whole
the
data,
videos,
data versus experience.
Exactly. Video's critical, isn't it? It has to be there because the data on its own means nothing.
If there's just one sitting there in the 1-1 and never moves, well, you know what that means. And if there's one that's really having a workout, getting ready for a first up run, you know what that means. So I think having the trials there is still incredibly important because number one, people just want to watch them.
Yes.
You can look at the numbers, and to be honest, the numbers in the trial results, I don't know what it's like now, but they weren't always bang on 100% accurate anyway. So sometimes you'd look at those and then go back and watch the trial and it would be a little bit different. But definitely, I think we're both big on the trial should be in there.
Yeah, and positions, I guess, in running in individual times, we have the codes, don't we? And that's sort of written in the harness.org form guide. The codes,
I don't need that. I don't need that personally.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, the codes are probably more important anyway, aren't they? I mean, in thoroughbreds, if you're fourth, you're fourth. But you can be fourth out wide or fourth on the inside. In harness, you've got leaders back 3 pegs, and then running line positions 2, 3, 4.
Well, the biggest one is the breeze in any of the codes, because you can be outside the leader and drilling and playing enforcer.
Yep, true.
Or you could be 12, 15 metres off the lead. So,
yeah,
if you're really serious, you're better off watching them anyway, and that's why they should be available. What's up next?
Darren Clayton. I just went back into the archives codes. This is a fun one.
I love Darren Clayton. What a man.
To retrieve this October 2019, I find it mind-boggling this has not been achieved as yet, and I know you tried to champion it, Cody. As an aside, I love the idea of form customization. Set the parameters and the metrics you want, and it filters, which is, you and I both agreed on, brilliant, and can be done.
Did Dasher watch the unrecorded
chat? No, exactly. But so the tweet he grabbed was in 2019 when he said, is the first priority of the new Vic CEO to get all the Vic trials on the HRA page. Should be, is possibly the biggest annoyance that you need to check 437. He counted, by the way, that was the number, the magic number, 437 different pages, sites / YouTube channels to get the trial form.
Yeah.
To which I responded, it's an ongoing project, because you will remember, Jace, we were talking about this in the offices of HRV. Admittedly, it is taking a while.
1986, I remember it started, yeah.
But my workaround is to have the trots.com.au open, type the horse name, click trial file reference, and have those trial replays ready. That's a workaround. It shouldn't need to be that way. I think Dashman and us are in firm agreement there. But it goes to show, doesn't it? 5 years, right, to get the trials into the form guide. Now, that is a long time.
Look, if we open Pandora's box here and talk about all the things that have been mentioned, and so if you want to encourage people to bet, you've got to give them the best opportunity. And just quickly on customization, that is a big thing for me, short form. So going back to the GRV website, the Watchdog, you want the simplest kind of form for the people who are trying to dip their toe into harness racing and don't know much about it. And then you want to step it up and have maybe 3-4 different tiers. And the top tier should have all the individual sectionals, how quick a lead time is compared to the average lead time for that class at a different track, everything. So that basically you want for nothing. And that means that when you have a bet and it doesn't work out, the dealer says you're out.
Jace, you've been putting up a lot of graphics in the last couple of weeks, which are great statistical graphics, and I'm finding myself sort of embracing that more and more. One of the things I go to is FR5, FR6, FR7 at Melton, for example, just to see when horses draw those 3 gates. You can, and I'm doing it manually. Imagine if you could just click those 3 gates when driven by X. Bang, there's your stats.
But even further, preferential draw against random, because
true.
One thing I remember learning years ago from the great Ace Barlow, in preferential draw races, wide it draws in the front line are the winningest. Because generally speaking, the way the PBD works, the best horses are going to draw wide on the front line or off the second row. But wide on the front line, it gives you the impetus. If you're better, it may be quicker, but definitely better than those drawn inside of you to keep moving forward. So carving it up every which way, you know what I mean? And it's not actually that hard. You run the reports, you offer the service, but again, you want an opportunity for punters to be able to look at what they want to look at. Some aren't going to they're not going to care about that, but they're going to care about something else. And if you can customize it personally, I think turnover increases exponentially. Yes.
Yep, 100%. David Lloyd, decent predicted odds.
Lloydie.
For the pub punters taking tries and quads, has lost so many of these punters. He says, don't read form. They just look at the odds. They don't even have this anymore. Herald Sun used to be good at this. And then he made the comment that truth was the best if you could get past page 3. Jabon?
What was on page 3?
I did say that, yes, page 3 was admittedly hard to get past for a young lad. But the truth guides were, in all seriousness, very, very good form guides. And every young fella, Jace, used to say, well, I'm only getting it to look at the form.
Steal it from Dad. Why have you been in the toilet for 20 minutes? Hey, Bobby.
So it's a shout. Yeah,
we've discussed that. It's the predicted prices are incredibly important, and we've mentioned for me in particular, it's not so much whether it's $51, $101, or $34. It's a $4 shot starting $9 or $2.20, and even more importantly, $1.70 shot, $1.50 shot, and it says $2.40, because if you think the $2.40 is available, you get yourself into a muck lather, and then you find out you're only getting $1.50, and it hurts heart.
Yeah, and I could be wrong, but there's at least one that I can think of for our form preview coming up where if I can get even half the price that's quoted, I'd be amazed. But see if you can think of that one as we work through the program, Jace. Darren Carroll, another good friend of ours and a good friend of the industry. Individual sectional time should be displayed next to each start in addition to race time. The data is available, so why not make it easier to observe and support form? That had a lot of likes, that one.
And that's because the engaged Twitterati are the hardcore harness racing lovers. And that's why I say, I think if you put all of those numbers on every single guide, it'd be too much for somebody who didn't know much about it, wouldn't it? But
it would.
It should be offered for those who want every little bit of information. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I like that. So let's, sorry, my Twitter's just gone off the screen for one moment, or X. Sinbad Bay, the abbreviation SS included, and sprint lane in operation removed from the race details.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to be honest. In the form on harness.org or trots.com is good, but again, it goes back once again to customization. There's a bunch of things that you don't need. Quite often people don't even, I've sort of gravitated towards it, particularly in short course races, but fastest mile rate, a lot of people don't care.
Well, it's totally dependent on the track, doesn't it? I mean, if you've gone to Menangle and had a win in a low-class race, your mile rate's going to be better than winning a top-class race on a tight track in Victoria.
And even the distance range numbers when you get up to a staying trip, actually, right across the board, where they start the parameter and end it is a little bit unusual sometimes. So it doesn't actually tell you the full story. So a lot of that, if I was customizing, I'd just say, starts this season, I don't care. I don't need any of that. And the beauty is that creates the room, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So if you want extra information, get rid of all that.
Oz Sports Punter, he says, and following, or they say, I don't know, Oz Sports Punter, and following on from trials is all trials to provide the same info. So random as to which tracks show what. And we've talked about this back in the previous role. I was big on no club should have trials, and I made this as much as I could when I was in charge of media and comms. I made it, if any club wants to run trials but not provide some video replay, even grainy footage, then they shouldn't be running trials. And that was largely agreed with, because you can't run trials and have absolutely no transparency in regard to video at all. That's not a good look.
No, the one thing, I'll tell you what, to make it easier on a couple, you prefer to have a caller.
Yes.
But if they don't, it's not the end of the world to me.
It's not. No, you just put the phone up, even put the phone up. And we saw that from, I think Kyle down at Warragul did it for a time. And look, okay, it's not the quality that you're going to get always from the thoroughbreds, but it doesn't matter. At least it's something and you can see it. And that's all that matters.
But like with a lot of things, I think our trials, I mean, the thoroughbred punters would disagree. I think our trials are more important than the thoroughbred trials.
Yeah.
Because more often thoroughbreds are just going around for a run. Whereas,
well, that's, exactly. True.
Anything would be great.
Sue Murray, as you mentioned, this was something that was high on Tom's wish list for form. He wanted trial results and videos to be in form guides as they are for interstate guides. I don't do the form anymore, of course, but would make life easier for our participants. Always thinking of the participants, Sue, and that is terrific. Agreed.
I could actually hear in my mind's eye, Tara just going, I haven't got it up yet.
2024, and we still haven't got that on
yet.
Tony Logan, I reckon New South Wales has them included if you click on the horse name, and that is true. And I guess, we could touch on this. We know that the the technology is there and it's in the system. I think the issue would be that the racing office would have to change the way they do things and get something built in to their system, I think, in Victoria for how they do it. And I don't think it's necessarily, there's been no great opposition. I think it's just getting it done, Jace.
Or is it not? It's IT and it's IT, isn't it?
Yes, relying on that bit of IT support with the racing office to build it.
But if it's already been done somewhere else in Victoria, yeah.
Well, in Australia, yeah, exactly.
Sorry, in Australia, why we can't do it, I don't know. But it's the trials are an easy one to pick on, but we've already discussed there's heaps of stuff you can do.
Matty Leppard, great friend of the game, the big cat. In all seriousness, if it's doable, why hasn't it been done already? I first raised the trial results and video linked into the form guides to HRV as a necessity 5 years ago and multiple times since. Yes, here we are with dwindling turnover and nothing has been done.
I love the big cat. I love the big cat, and I don't mind a couple of things you've said, but I will have an aneurysm if I hear about people saying what they've raised, because I think I've raised 254,000 things over the journey. So we understand. I think it's the focus and the impetus that needs to be put on form, which then leads to turnover, leads to prize money, and why the focus hasn't been on how do we make it easier for people? Because harness racing form is the hardest to read out of the 3 codes if you don't know what you're doing.
So I did say to Matty, yes, been raised by quite a few over the years, me included. The issue has been getting all the cogs and departments connected. It's absolutely doable because the technology's there. Now, I want to read out Matty's response, though, Jace, because this is another part of the discussion. He says, let's hope it gets sorted. I bet into 4 states, but it has got to a stage that I prioritise Vic last when getting the form done because Vic takes too long with chasing up trial replays rather than click of a button. So Matt Leppard's gone WA first, New South Wales second, Queensland third, Victoria fourth. And then someone else responded somewhere else.
I saw somebody else.
Oz Sports Punter then came in and said, of the 4 states, I bet Victoria would be third. And I did remark to both, that's not ideal because I would have thought, I'm biased to Victoria because that's where I've grown up and done my form. But just on size and scope, I would have thought Victoria should at least be first or second in most people's eyes. Is that a worry that we've got punters saying that, Jace?
Well, of course it is. I mean, I can't be declarative about this, but all the information that I remember receiving, there's a bit of demagoguery or fear inciting out of all that. Victoria would still be the biggest turnover state. All right?
Yep.
But that's not a reason to not make it better.
Of course.
We'll talk about race 1 in the form preview as well, but even the decision to put, we've discussed this briefly, to put the open class as the first race. It's one of those false narratives or false economies, I reckon, where you go, most eyes are going to be on here straight after thoroughbreds, so we'll put our free-for-all race on here. But it still doesn't make sense, does it? I mean, it's saying, let's do it here, but you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And what other code? It's like putting the AFL match on before the under-18s or the reserves back in the day.
Well, it is for you and I, Jace. That's one thing I'd probably challenge somewhat on, and that's not to say I disagree with what you're saying or I disagree with what HRV is doing, putting that race first. I've grown up with the feature race being races 6, 7, 8, somewhere around that, and the Gallops have done that for years. Does that mean it should always be done that? If the data says otherwise, of course not, because you should be led by data. And that's where I'm not arguing that you're wrong. I'm just saying I'm probably sitting on the fence on this one more.
I don't think the data is saying otherwise. I think the data, this is the thing about data, you can read it one of 2 ways. You can say, well, we'll pile up here. But the idea of having the feature race later on a program, as you mentioned, it's always been the way. You want to build people's anticipation.
Yeah. So what if I said to you, Bond, that race 1 last week, what if it comes out that it was one of the highest turnover betting races in recent history?
It would only mean anything to me if you told me that contextualized with the wagering on the remainder of the card.
Yep.
So
that's a fair call.
If everyone's tuning in for race 1 and they're like smashing it, fantastic. But if they're just dropping off, and by the time we get to race 7, you've got Bubkus, no deal.
Yep.
That doesn't make sense.
No, I hear what you're saying, and I can understand your position. I'm interested to see if this does continue, this new way of putting those fast class races early. I'd love to see some statistics released pretty regularly, and as you say, put the statistics out across the whole night, and let's compare apples with apples, as they say.
And just in case what you were just intimating has an element of truth to it, which I believe it might, you won't get that from race 1.
Okay. No. So, you and I will talk about that shortly. No. Well, and that's an interesting point. Yeah, you don't, isn't it?
You can't isolate one. You can't isolate one situation.
Yeah, if you throw it out there and no one can even do the form for the first, then you're in big trouble. We better quickly push on. Mitchell Cole, trials are treated so differently from harness to gallops. Harness don't treat them in any way seriously compared to the gallops. Maybe using the info from being sent to the trials and how they get around track with the alternate gear, etc. I did respond to Mitchell to say, look, there's an element of truth there, but I agree with your earlier take. The thoroughbreds is also an absolute crapshoot. There's horses being pulled up, etc. Trials are trials. If you don't watch the replay and you don't know what you're looking at, you're probably not going to get much out of it.
No.
Kay Howlett Racing, clickability of a trainer in form guide to see stats only in WA from the fields. A horse's own sectionals along with the races, quarters, position in race for the first 400, i.e. did it press forward 4 wide, then have to pull back to last, or did it get to the front easily? It's kind of a hard one there, I guess, because there's only so many words.
I think you got to watch. I think with that you got to watch the replays. Yeah,
you do. Kay Howlett also says from the new site, being able to see a mare's progeny, breeding plays a big part in the breeding, particularly for babies and newcomers. And Kay Howlett was on a roll. And then another one was, or maybe gear changes and associated stewards' comments, i.e. if it hung last start, poll added for the next start. Gear changes is an interesting one because they are not treated with the respect in harness racing, Jace, than they are in the gallops. And a lot of people might say that's because it doesn't matter as much.
Customization. I don't live and die on gear changes. You watch and listen to Brittany Graham talk about gear changes, and it's the most beautiful thing you've ever heard. And she can explain so eloquently and articulately what they mean. And maybe I'd be a better punter, a better judge if I did bring them in, but I don't think about them too much. There's a couple of gear changes, blocks on first time or something like that.
Yeah.
Where you really care. But for me, it's not overly important, but for somebody else it might be. So the whole point is have the whole gamut of information available and then use what you will.
Good call. 2 things on gear changes. If a trainer's listening and wants to fill us in on the tweet, tell us about gear changes. What's your opinion? Because I'd love to know what the trainers think. Okay, so get on the tweet and check out, it's at Pace Setters and AU, and let us know, are gear changes important from a trainer's point of view for punters? And point 2, let me know what that black leather thing is on the horses with the sort of dangles down like this and is, sort of covers their nose, etc. Jace, do you know the bit I'm talking about? It's got all these little flappy bits of like black leather. And
like Bane wears in.
Yes. And I asked I asked a couple of people one night out at Melton. I said, "What do you call that?" And even trainers said, "I don't know. It's just a thing that goes there." Does anyone know what that is actually called? And do we capture that thing on our gear changes? So,
I think that's the most important part of the chat.
It's been a good discussion, and I hope it breeds more discussion, Jace.
Well, we're going to talk about this heaps more, aren't we? This is really, we're just trying to incite people to create change from the outside here because we tried from the inside, but to create the change because these are people who are investing in the game. And it is a bit of a fear factory when you say, well, I'm not betting on you as much because you're not doing this, but it's actual, there's truth to it. You look at it and go, well, I'll tell you what, if that's going to take me 20 minutes longer and I'm a serious punter and I want to invest, I can't waste the 20 minutes on that where I can go somewhere else. So Victoria's always been a bit of a leader, I reckon, across the board with much of this, but fallen behind a little bit in a couple of areas. And all of Australia's fallen behind in a few areas as well.
Yeah, Jace, what we'll do is we'll pull every single bit of feedback we've got together on one document and we will send that document in. That's the promise we've made to the punters on Twitter. We will send that to HRV and we're just gathering information from punters. That's what it's all about. We're all playing a part. Hey, do with this what you will. But here's the thoughts of the punters, yeah?
We are hunters and we are gatherers cards.
And Darren Clayton, PS, just came through on the Twitter just in time. Not a form guide referral per se, but after the meeting resulted, have the stewards report linked to the results page. Don't mind that. You do have to go hunting in another screen for the stewards report. And the other issue I find sometimes
the follow-up report.
Yes, I was going to say, you can't find it because it says we'll follow up with them in days to come. And then I don't know where that's ever published. It's just buried away somewhere, I think. So
I'm sure it is somewhere, but I can't.
Yeah,
then you go,
I don't know where it is either.
No abnormalities. So,
all right, that wraps up that first part of the chat. We'll be talking about the form in just a moment.